Welcome to the program, everybody from the edge of America. I'm Rick Amato. We're following this One America News top story. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, who served under 8 U.S. presidents, says the Obama administration's ability to get Iran to the negotiations table is a success story in of itself. But he then goes on to say that their motives and goals are naively dangerous. Joining me this time to weigh in on this story and other related topics is the founder, the president of the Israel Group, Barry Nussbaum. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick.
Served under 8 U.S. presidents. He is a man of integrity and credibility on this issue. He says, look, the fact that got Iran to the table in the first place is a success story, as I pointed out. But they were there because their economy was collapsing and they feared the possibility of a government overthrow. How are the words of Robert Gates being taken in Israel at this time?
I'll tell you, Robert Gates is a really big deal. He's served 8 presidents. When a man of his background and experience in Washington, relating especially to American defense, speaks, the White House ought to listen, and certainly the rest of the world listens.
I agree with you. Now, you know, he is offering some insight here that we've not heard elsewhere, and that is the motives of the White House. He says, he didn't use these words, I'll use them. He says that the motives of the Obama administration are noble. They believe that they can bring Iran into the international community by showing Iran, look, we'll lift sanctions. All you have to do is play the game fairly. And he says that's extremely naive, extremely dangerous to take that point of view. Those sanctions should be lifted only after the regime shows they are adhering to the agreement. Your response?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with him more. It's ironically, Rick, it's the exact same speech that Bibi Netanyahu gave to the joint session of Congress a couple months ago.
Very good point.
And
you're right.
He came to America and he said, look, the goal is a noble goal. Let's keep Iran from getting nuclear weapons and bring them into the international community, but don't give them everything they're asking for without having them pay a price of admission.
And Netanyahu was criticized and ridiculed by many on the left, saying he's a warmonger. Bob Gates makes the same message, the same speech that Netanyahu gave, and he says there is an alternative to war.
Absolutely. In fact, he almost makes the exact same speech with the exact same conclusion, Rick, which is the Obama postulate to America was make this deal as it's structured or we have war. And what Netanyahu said is identical to what Bob Gates is now saying. No, go to the tack that brought Iran to the table to begin with, which is a tough sanctions put on Iran's economy until such time as they become fair players, which means you're not enriching uranium, you're not sponsoring terrorism, you let the international community in, you start honoring the agreements you've signed over the last 15 years, which they've breached all of them. You don't say, well, okay, now, since you promised, we're going to take the sanctions off. Now, since you've promised, we don't have to inspect everything. And now, since you promised, here's billions and billions and billions of dollars so you can survive as a government.
All right, another key point that Robert Gates makes that I've not heard made and had never occurred to me until I listened to his comments. He said, look, in the real world, it doesn't work what President Obama is proposing to us publicly, and that is you put sanctions on, you take them off, you put them back on, you take them off based upon their behavior. No, you don't just snap a finger and take them off. It is a process. You either leave them on and leave them there until they prove to be good citizens, true to their word, and then you phase them out. You don't put them on and off. The real world doesn't operate that way.
Well, ironically, Rick, what the president said in the Rose Garden speech was that sanctions won't come off until they comply, and that there'll be unfettered, complete inspections of all sites. Both of those key points, as Robert Gates points out, if they're not in the deal, there isn't a deal. If we can't inspect everywhere, there is no deal. If the sanctions come off in the beginning, putting them back on, as Robert Gates says, they don't snap back. That's impossible.
Well, let me ask you, Barry. It's not, we keep focusing on President Obama in the U.S., but we all know it's not. There's a consortium of European nations here plus Russia. Why do you suppose so many world leaders are also so motivated to jump in on what appears to and be a part of what appears to be very flawed logic?
It's money. It's money that derives from the oil business. Don't forget, Iran has been a pariah in the international oil trade. There's a tremendous amount of oil available there, plus all the development that's not going on, and these international corporations want pieces of it. Those governments want that oil and can get it very cheaply as soon as the sanctions are lifted and there's open trade. It's an enormous resource that they could be trading with.
So you believe that Iran will undercut the oil market with their pricing?
You know, even if they just hit the oil market and become part of it, prices will drop further. That makes everything better for the Western economies, and including Russia, because that gives them a source of cheap oil.
And let's not forget, no one talks about this. I'm not saying, you know, there's something intrinsically evil about it, but it should be brought up. Who is the supplier to Iran's nuclear program?
A lot of it's coming from Russia.
Exactly. I mean, don't we call that a conflict of interest?
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Okay. Now, the Iranian foreign minister says there will be no international inspections of military sites. That smacks of, I mean, come on. We're talking about, we're concerned they might create a nuclear weapon. And,
I'll tell you,
and they're saying no inspection of military sites?
Rick, this should be headlines in every paper in the United States right now. It's such a big story, and it's not being covered. And here's why it's so important. All of the advanced centrifuges that spin the uranium fast to make it enriched fast for the purpose of making nuclear weapons quickly is on nuclear sites within the military bases. So when the foreign minister comes out and says, okay, you can inspect only the sites we let you and never on military bases, what he's saying is we're going to have absolutely unfettered nuclear enrichment going on 24/7 for the next millennium, and you're never going to be able to look at it. Gates says that's crazy.
All right, Bob Gates, as you pointed out, is a man of integrity and credibility on this issue. The whole world should listen to the White House, certainly Western European leaders. Bottom line on all this is, you know, President Obama is after his legacy. Obamacare may or may not be part of that legacy. He wants this nuclear deal to be a part of his legacy. I fear for the American people, Barry Nussbaum, that he is setting himself up for a flawed legacy because, you know, that is something that's going to come back to haunt.
I'll tell you what he's doing, Rick, is he's handing nuclear weapons to Iran. I think it's incredibly obvious, and the experts are saying the same thing.
I will leave it right there. Barry Nussbaum, you're back with us later. Well, you're an expert, so I don't know what they're saying. You join us later on the Grassroots panel.
Be happy to stay.
All right. When you are around Her Majesty, I should say, you speak only when spoken to. From the edge of America, I'm Rick Amato. Back after this.
A good point. Yeah, just wait. Yeah, maybe when I finish talking to the people here. How's that? I might. I'll have to ponder it, but I will put it on my list for due consideration. Yes, sir.